and demonstrations took place in cities across the country. In Minneapolis, that ended with the arrest of more than 646 people, the largest mass arrest in Minnesota history. We're going to hear from some of the organizers of that march and the arrestees from that night. We are demanding 1 month later that the charges against all of us be dropped, against the 646 misdemeanor cases, both the adults and the minors, as well as the felony cases, the bogus felony case against Amina McCaskill. So with that, I'm going to call up our first speaker, Jay Yates, from Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar.
So TCC for Jay, just wanted to read a quick statement that we had written in response largely to Governor Walz' response to us, requesting that the charges be dropped. 1 month ago, on November 4th, Governor Walz ordered police from across the state to carry out the largest mass arrest in Minnesota history. 647 people were arrested on the highway below us, and more were arrested and brutalized right here as MPD tried to prevent neighbors from observing and filming police or supporting protesters in any way. We are here to demand that all of those charges be dropped, to demand that the governor, the mayor, and the police respect our right to protest, and to say loud and clear, we will not stop marching as long as injustice continues in this land. Since November 4th, we have organized ourselves for legal defense, and we and our supporters have signed petitions, made phone calls, and joined car caravan protests to demand that charges be dropped. To date, the only charges dropped are those filed in error in Ramsey County for the handful of cases where arresting officers didn't even know where they were arresting people and wrongfully cited people for a location on 35E in St. Paul. The Minneapolis City Attorney has not dropped the hundreds of adult misdemeanor cases, and Mike Freeman's office has not dropped the charges against minors, nor the bogus felony charges against Amina McCaskill. We are here today to once again demand that all these charges be dropped. And we demand that the political leaders in this city, county, and state take a stand against the criminalization of protest, especially in a state where hundreds of murderous police officers have never been prosecuted for their crimes against our neighbors. Governor Tim Walz has answered community outcry by justifying the police action as if it was for our protection. As organizers of the November 4th protest, we have a response to the governor. It reads, in part, since the formation of Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar, our demands have been clear. We want officers who commit violence against our communities to face justice for the harm that they do. We want compensation for families who have lost people to police violence. And we demand community control of the police so that we have the ability to self-determine how policing is done in our communities. Those demands have gone unanswered for years, and this summer outrage boiled over when the torture and murder of George Floyd was captured on camera. Your response, Walz, to that outrage was overwhelming force with the National Guard, and as yet you have enacted no meaningful legislation or executive orders to address violent and racist policing. Yet once again, on November 4th, you mobilized overwhelming police force to attack 1,000 people marching in Minneapolis. It is shameful to lecture us about protesters' safety when you allowed your officers to trap children, people with disabilities, and seniors on a highway for over 5 hours with no access to bathrooms, heat, or food. In fact, the whole operation was an exercise in cruelty. Minors were separated from their parents and other adults when arrested, then dropped off alone in the middle of the night, while police refused to tell parents where they were taken. Parents were handcuffed unnecessarily in front of younger children, and family members of those who were killed by police were forced to relive the trauma of a violent encounter with law enforcement who showed up dressed for war. While we were armed with picket signs and music, we faced off with hundreds of police in full riot gear pointing their weapons at us. Police on the scene repeatedly took actions aimed at escalating the situation and provoking conflict. While organizers worked hard to keep protesters united, Police tightened their cordon, pulled one young protester out of the crowd, brought in their sonic weapon, and called on the press to leave. Some police threatened protesters saying they were Proud Boys, others displaying 3%er badges on their uniforms. Some officers were seen wearing thin blue line masks while others wore no mask at all. Pressing the crowd ever closer together, putting some on tightly packed buses, and removing protesters' masks under pretense of taking pictures, all contributed towards creating a potential COVID super spreader event. What these arrests amount to is basically a very expensive intimidation tactic. It's clear from the amount of resources expended on arresting us that the state has money to burn. And yet, when we ask for housing for all, when we demand meaningful financial relief from COVID, when we demand resources for the communities hardest hit by economic crisis and the pandemic, there's suddenly no money left. It's patronizing for you to tell us that these arrests were necessary to teach us a lesson about conducting safe protests. We have marched safely for years, and neither you nor your police officers have ever acted to make us safer. You have not passed any laws to hold drivers accountable for deliberately targeting protesters on roads or highways, and you have not ensured accountability for police officers who openly encourage drivers to attack protesters. You have largely failed to arrest or prosecute drivers who have attacked protesters, and even in your letter, you offer a defense of the oil tanker driver who was criminally charged for driving into protesters on I-35W earlier this summer. It's hypocritical to cite any safety concerns with our protests while you allow armed, unmasked, racist Trump supporters to party on your front lawn immediately after you announce new restrictions on gatherings. Why were they not arrested for their safety? All power to the people. The whole damn system is guilty as hell.
Woo! Say that!
So I'm not moving the mic stand because I'm the only little person. But next up, I'm going to ask our other MC from November 4th to come forward. From Minnesota Workers United, let's hear it for David Gilbert Pedersen.
I'm also smaller, so I am going to move the mic stand. My name is David Gilbert Pedersen. I'm speaking on behalf of Minnesota Workers United today. Minnesota Workers United is a group of rank-and-file union members and organizers who look to build real labor solidarity among the international working class and to work to build a real fighting labor movement. We do labor events, solidarity events, raise money, and strike support. On November 4th, over 55 union members were arrested from at least 24 different locals, including public sector workers, Teamsters, carpenters, office workers, communication professionals, educators, nurses, service employees, food workers, and more. We were there on November 4th because labor knows that our voice matters and that only by fighting together with other impacted communities can our votes be counted and our elected leaders be held accountable. Labor was out there because we know that an injury to one is an injury to all and that we are stronger together. That means being in the streets when we need to defend the working class and take collective action. In a ridiculous overreaction and change to normal police responses, a coordinated effort was made by statewide law enforcement agencies in which 646 plus people were kettled for no reason, trapped on a highway, and not allowed to leave. Then arrested and charged with double charges, including misdemeanors that carry up to 90 days in jail and carry multiple court appearances, as well as the bogus felony charges against Amina McCaskill. They spent millions of dollars on this shameful action at the exact same time that we are in a global pandemic, and the city, state, and federal government refuses to help workers that are losing their job, people with no health care, and in desperate need of economic relief. That these hundreds of thousands of dollars could have gone a long way towards solving. But instead of doing anything to help people, Governor Tim Walz, the Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, and police commissioners, police chiefs, and the Commissioner of Public Safety decided to spend money in this shameful way, criminalizing people speaking out and making sure that we had an agenda, regardless of who the president was, that fit the needs of working people and working class people across the country. Labor is already working together to fight back. AFSCME Local 3800, the clerical workers at the U of M, have passed a resolution to offer philosophical and material support to our union members who were arrested and to demand and organize that all of the charges be dropped for everyone on that highway. Other unions are moving similar resolutions this week. Labor folks are meeting with Minnesota Workers United to coordinate support for the children and all of those arrested on November 4th. As labor, we will continue to demand, organize, and support each other until all of the charges are dropped. That's what labor does. That's what solidarity is. Minnesota Workers United calls on Governor Tim Walz, the Public Safety Commissioner, the City Attorney of Minneapolis, the Minneapolis Mayor, and the City Council to demand that all charges are dropped against protesters. And immediately that all protesting charges, including minors, including the bogus felony charges against Amina McCaskill, and the charges against all of the 646 plus people are dropped immediately. Solidarity.
Thank you, David. I'm going to have Dave come up next. So the movement for accountability for policing in our community has at its core the families of those whose loved ones have been murdered by police. We have an epidemic of police murder across this country. And of course, those most impacted include Black and Native communities. Our next speaker is from Native Lives Matter, one of the organizations that hosted the November 4th protest, and is the brother of someone who was killed by police in another community. Please welcome Gabe.
Hi everybody, my name is Gabriel Blackout. I'm here on behalf of Native Lives Matter, and I'm here on behalf of my brother Paul Kastner, who was murdered by police. So our group, Native Lives Matter, we stand up for those that are victimized by police violence and those that are experiencing police brutality. That's what we do. And that night that we seen these people, these activists got arrested on the highway, we support them. We support those that got arrested. And we stand with them as they demand that charges be dropped against these arrestees. And the way that our family sees it, police brutality, it runs deep. It runs deep in these cities. That's why these people are out here. And we stand in solidarity with these people, and we stand in solidarity with everyone else. Thank you guys. Native Lives Matter.
Thank you, Gabe. So next I want to invite up another community leader who is down with us on the highway, up front trying to face off with those police officers that threw up a line in front of us out of nowhere. Please welcome from Racial Justice Network, Nakima Levy Armstrong.
Woo!
Good afternoon. As you have heard from speakers who have come before me today, we are standing in solidarity demanding that the charges against 647 demonstrators be immediately dropped. What happened on November 4th, 2020 is an embarrassment within the state of Minnesota. To punish and criminalize those who are peacefully protesting police violence, discrimination against our immigrant populations, racism is absolutely absurd and unacceptable. We would have no reason to protest and be out on highways or shutting things down or demanding justice if this state lived up to its responsibility to protect all residents of the state of Minnesota and to treat us with freedom, justice, and equality. At the end of the day, the folks who should be held accountable are law enforcement officers who fail to live up to their responsibilities, who are being paid decent salaries, who receive pensions, who are able to care for their families, and yet who time and time again continue to abuse and criminalize the most vulnerable residents within the state of Minnesota, and particularly within the city of Minneapolis. Even now, we're in the midst of a crisis with jockeying happening between city council members and the mayor of Minneapolis over what needs to happen with our police force. What we saw on the night of November 4th were far too many officers, including officers from the Minneapolis Police Department, who were engaging in intimidation tactics against protesters, who were brutalizing people who were standing on the sidelines in support of those who were protesting police violence, and even being abused by officers on horseback. It reminded me of a scene from movies that I've watched about slavery. To see these white male officers on horseback trying to chase and intimidate people is absolutely unconscionable and unacceptable. And Governor Walz, as a Democratic governor, you should know better than to continue to punish our right to freedom of speech. We have gone to your office numerous times. We have shut down your office long before George Floyd was killed by the Minneapolis Police Department, and yet you refuse to meet with us. We are demanding that you step up to the plate, that you use your executive power, just as you did during the demonstrations that followed George Floyd being killed, to call in the National Guard and all of your law enforcement around the state. Use that same energy to push for the dropping of all charges against 647 individuals, including minors, elders, people with disabilities, and U of M student Amina McCaskill. It's absolutely unconscionable that you all would try to derail this young woman's future for standing up for justice for all of us. City of Minneapolis, the new city attorney, step up to the plate. You said you got there because you care about equity. Prove it in this instance and drop the charges immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Nakima. We had a lot of groups, like I said, 32 organizations were out there on November 4th. Most of us were down on that highway. Some folks were up here, and we saw our neighbors being brutalized from the highway. There was nothing we could do, you know. But the fact is, there's something that can be done now. All these charges can go away. We can have real, meaningful police accountability in our community going forward. We can address the real needs in our community. Or we can follow the ongoing leaderless lead of Governor Walz, ignore the real problems in our state. Talk about Martin Luther King, but act like the very people that Martin Luther King stood against. I want to invite up our next speaker from one of the many organizations from November 4th. Longtime work in this community supporting all of our movements from the Anti-War Committee. Please welcome Kent Morey.
Why are we here today? It's simple. We're here to demand the dropping of all charges against any and all friends and neighbors who were arrested on the protest on November 4th, 2020. Just right over this barrier right here. This clear attack was planned by Governor Walz and Mayor Frey to intimidate any resistance to the hypocritical and repressive rules. The anti-war committee said they were going to fight. We will continue to stand up, fight back, drop the charges.
So this is it. This is where they kettled us and arrested everybody.
local level. It's also a national problem. We came out to resist austerity and repression that both Trump and Biden have promised the people in the United States.
Yes.
While defeating Trump may be a positive step forward, Biden wants the same failed racist policies that have led to the U.S. imprisoning more people than any country in the world. The United States is the most incarcerated nation in the world. Biden wants to continue invading, bombing other countries for charting independent paths. So the Anti-War Committee demands a people's agenda, not an agenda of war and poverty, not a Trump and Biden agenda. The motive behind this arrest is clear. The motive is to neutralize the justice movement before the trial of the 4 killer cops in the George Floyd murder. It's a common tactic for the police departments to make these kinds of arrests.
Yep.
So that they can try to offer a plea deal in exchange for not getting arrested for same and similar charges within 1 year. The goal of this arrest is to stick as many people in straitjackets so we won't protest the continuing crimes of Minneapolis and St. Paul Police Department.
Yep.
The Anti-War Committee absolutely will fight all these charges to the end.
Yes.
Drop all the charges of all the protesters, including the felony charges against Amina McCaskill.
Yes.
Stand up, fight back.
So our next speaker is another really important community leader from the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE of Minnesota. Please welcome Executive Director Jailani Hussein.
As other speakers have mentioned, I wake up a lot of days in this state proud to be here. But I'm also mindful that I wake up every single day knowing that this land and this particular state that promises so much progress, so much process, and particularly a state that claims to be a state that is less racist. I'm reminded every single day since the charges of 600 plus people have been charged that this state and the leadership of the people in this state are no different than anywhere else in this country, and particularly some of the worst places in the United States of America. Right. Minnesota have to wake up today. Yes. Minnesotans have to realize that we have created a state that only protects suburban white residents. That's right. That does not look into what is happening in the state. Right now we have hundreds of people and thousands of people who are locked up in prison today dealing with COVID that could have been prevented. Right. And many of those people were charged by a system that did not value black people in this country. So the reason they're even in there is the reason that is the type of reason where President-elect Biden and the policies that he stood for 40 plus years brought so many black and brown people into prison today. And what we have saw on November 4th is a continuation of abuse of power. That's exactly what we saw. We saw an ability to take discretion, to see that many people come out demanding justice and standing up for the rights of all people, to improve our state, to improve our communities, to be faced with this type of brutality. Not only were children separated, but people were kept on this highway for 5 hours without food, without resources, without even health care, not knowing what type of needs that the people who were protesting needed here. We really need to understand what took place here. It was the most un-Minnesotan thing that we could ever be able to deal with here in the state. And so I ask and urge every single resident of this state, if you care about George Floyd and that's the only name you know that there are hundreds and thousands of people who went through the similar type of dealings that George Floyd's family is dealing with, which is demanding for justice. Demanding for justice. And 600 people came out demanding for justice on this highway. And they were met with the brutality of the administration and the system that had been created in this country and in this state. They had a great deal of discretion to make that night. And they chose to punish protesting. That's what they chose. And on that highway was a reflection of Minnesotans. Nurses, doctors, teachers, family members, people for all walks of life, of all faiths, were bonded together in unity to stand for justice, and they were met with police brutality, which exactly tells us why we should continue to protest and stand up against police brutality in this state. No proof, no better proof is what happened on that highway, that justice is not served in the state. And every single day we see that, not only in St. Paul, but in all parts of this state. So I urge those people who are comfortable tonight in suburban Minneapolis, suburban cities around the Twin Cities, to know that your brothers and sisters who live next to you, your teacher, your nurse, your doctor, are charged with a bogus charge. With a bogus charge. What should have took place was the decision makers of that night should all be fired. Those who put those people and arrested should be fired. They risked the lives of children. They risked the lives of people who needed to go home. I want you to know that they thought, at that moment, they thought that they were going to quell or stop or dissuade or stop or make us think we will not show up. But all they have done is made more people consider not only showing up, but standing up for justice. November 3rd was an election, but November 4th was a people's movement and a glimpse of a revolution that will not be shut out by charges or politicians. This movement is in our blood. This movement is in all of us. This movement is in all of us. Our nurses, our doctors, our engineers, the rich, the poor, everyone believes that we demand for justice, and we will do that every single day on any highway, on any street, until we get justice for everyone. For everyone. And with that, I say to Governor Walz and the leadership of the city of Minneapolis, stop failing us every single day. Stop failing us every single day. You claim to stand with the people, then stand with the people. Show up and march with us on the streets and on the highways like everyone else. But the reality is you're not standing with us. You're hypocrites. You are chained by a system that is built on racism. That is built on the backs of people like us. But I tell you, the days where we turn back are over. We are now even more resolute, more resilient, more energized, and we are ready to move forward in this time for justice for George Floyd and for the thousands of nameless families across this state who have never seen justice. We will bring justice for them, and we will bring justice for the children who are unborn today, who may face this system that we are going to dismantle bolt by bolt by any means necessary.
Thank you, Jelani. So, our final speaker is someone who was allegedly in my car when we were committing a misdemeanor on this highway. Which is to say, we didn't commit a crime, we were standing up against a crime. Right? And the next speaker is Tashira Garraway Allen, who knows better than most of us what the crimes of this system look like. Her son's father, Justin Tigan, was murdered by St. Paul police. And since that time, and especially since the murder of George Floyd, Tashira has been tirelessly organizing with other families who faced the same loss as she has. Please welcome Tashira from Families Supporting Families Against Police Violence.
My question to the elected officials is what exact side are you on? And as I always say, when I ask what side are you on, I'm asking, are you on the right side or are you on the wrong side?
That's right.
Because we seen when George Floyd was laying on that ground, we seen that that was clearly wrong. It happened that way because something needed to be revealed. Something needed to come forward. And that's the truth about what's really going on here in the state of Minnesota. What's been going on in the state of Minnesota. But they were successfully able to cover it up time and time and time again. But God was tired. God was tired of what they are doing to human beings here in the state of Minnesota and around the world. But it is clear that it is a problem here in Minnesota because the biggest cases that there have come from the state of Minnesota. Philando Castile, George Floyd, and Jamar Clark. They reached everywhere, and they all came from Minnesota. Is that not an indication that something is wrong here? So the people, the community, families, children, disabled people, deaf people, was pushed out to the freeway because we've cried and we pleaded in those offices. We've been to the meetings. We've been to the city council meetings. We've been in the Capitol. And we pleaded and we begged. And nothing changed. Nothing changed. People are still being brutalized and beat. And bit by dogs. The same way they did the father to my child. That's what they just did to a man on Saturday night. Police are not here to brutalize the community and add to what they say is crime. They are the root of the crimes. They're the true source of the crimes that are going on. So when we are pushed to the streets and we're crying out for help because we're on the freeway, you elected officials, you send them out to brutalize us more for fighting for what's right? What side are you on? What side are you on? Are you on the right side for human life, for humanity, for standing up for what's right? Or are you on the side of the people that are oppressing? Are you on the side of brutalization? Are you on the side of murders? Because that's what it boils down to. You got to pick a side. You got to pick a side. There is no in between. Tim Walz, there is no in between. Keith Ellison, John Hilton, Mayor Fry, there is no in between. You have to pick a side of right and wrong for humanity, for the people, for the families that are out here hurting, for the community. These people have come alongside our families to stand with us and to fight for us. And as elected officials, but most of all, as human beings, you, elected officials, should be doing the same. Thank you.
So Tashira was our last speaker. I don't know if y'all have any questions, but as you can see now, every time you come to a press conference, most of the people you're going to hear from are people who were arrested on Interstate 94 on November 4th. Most of the people that are going to be in your photos and your videos are people who were out there who were criminalized by the police for speaking up for the truth and for justice. We demand that all these charges be dropped. The fact is, the protesters from November 4th just like the protesters all summer long were treated like we were the criminals, when in fact it was the police who attacked us that have been committing crimes in our communities every day with no accountability. The fact is, we will not stop marching, whether it's on the highway or some other road, or into your offices or camped out in front of your houses, which you know we've done, all of y'all. And we're gonna do it again. We might even come back to Hugo, I hear. Look, the fact is, we are unstoppable. And why are we unstoppable? Because we know we do not have to live like this. We refuse to live like this. And if we are going to die like this, we are not going to go quietly.
Say that.
So I want to say, Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar is one of many organizations working in our communities to fight for an end to police crimes. We're doing that through demanding community control of the police. But we have many organizations that have amazing work to lift up families, to bring together communities, and to bring forward concrete solutions to address the problems in our communities. We don't need more police attacking more protesters. We need real answers, real change. We will stand together until all these charges are dropped, but also until we win what we came here, what we came marching for. So with that, are there any questions? Hearing none, I think our speakers were amazing and said it all. Thank you all for being here.